Welcome back to the People We Meet podcast with Mandy and Antonio Martin.
Hey.
And again, please, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. That really helps our numbers. And then like and share this podcast if you find it valuable and helpful to you. So thank you again for watching. Today we are here with, finally,
Yes. Yes.
our friend Joe Moon.
Yes.
So we've been anticipating this. Joe is a very good friend and has really helped us just in our personal finances and running our business and investing, and just has a lot of knowledge about those areas. And not only does he have knowledge, he loves to teach and loves to share and is very good at doing those things. So very easy to listen to, understand, teaches really big concepts on, fifth grade level.
Yes.
It is able to do that. So you can teach it on a high level, and then fifth grade level is what we kind of like. So thank you for coming.
Glad to be here.
Yes.
I'm excited.
You let them know how we met Joe.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you, Joe. And man, I'm just so excited because, it's like when you think about friends and people, different things like that. When I think about Joe, it's like the Bible talks about iron sharpeneth iron. And, it's like you always want to put people around you that's basically challenges you and inspire you and just lift you up. And he does all those different things. And so it's just like, to be around him, it's very inspiring. And then it's like, you better bring your A game.
Yeah, that when we'll get to this in a second. We were in a business group together, and Antonio would be bogged down about business stuff. And he would just go hang out with Joe. That y'all wouldn't even really talk about business stuff necessarily, but just being around Joe would cheer him up. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for helping my husband.
Yes. And so me and Joe, we actually met how many years ago?
That was a long time.
It was actually 2007 is when we joined BNI. And it was funny because the first time he came and then I came, we were both kind of visiting and checking out. So this is the business networking group that we were in. And I want to say, so that would have been 19 years or so. So which child? Do you have a 19-year-old?
So I have
Because someone had just been born.
So that would have been Jackson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Jackson would have been the most recent one. He was born in 2005.
Okay. So that, it was just funny at that first meeting I went to, I was sitting by a group of guys and you guys were talking about kids. I thought that was just really neat. There's all these business owners you guys were talking about raising
We had
kids.
two little bitties back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I remember the first time we actually went out, it was me, you, and Chris Hines.
Oh, okay.
We did a one-to-one.
Okay.
And, man, I was pretty nervous. It's just like, man, doing a one-on-one with you two. And, but here it is years later, just all that God has done, just in the relationship and different things like that. And so.
Well, the funny thing is, back then, 2007, that would have been 2 years into my first business.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about anything back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just grinding, trying to figure things out.
Okay.
Wow. What business was that?
That was Velocity. It was an
Okay.
IT company.
Okay.
Okay.
What was it named back then?
Started off with Mobile IT Solutions,
Okay. That's what I remember it as.
which I never liked that name. But a mentor told me to use that name because it was more descriptive of what we did. But then I looked at other companies, Verizon or whatever, and I'm like, well, there's our descriptive. And so we rebranded, I don't know, a few years later to something Velocity, which
Okay.
I thought I liked that better. So
Okay.
helping move businesses forward.
Yeah.
So in addition to the business group we were in, Joe went to Terry College of Business at University of Georgia, and then started a business group, mentoring, teaching group. Do you remember about what year that would have been? 2012, maybe?
That sounds about right.
Okay.
So, Chris Hanks,
Right.
good friend of mine. If you don't know who Chris Hanks is, go look him up. Google him. Really remarkable man. He was, I think it was the Small Business Development Center had a class, and I was there, and he came and spoke, and it just blew me away. And I think I even remember what he spoke about. I think he was talking about how to build value into your business from the standpoint of if you were thinking about selling your business. Well, of course, way back then I wasn't even considering that. But he was talking about even if you weren't considering selling your business, you got to think about it that way because one day you will be. And I never crossed my mind. So I basically went up to him after that class and said, "Hey, you're my new best friend," whether you like it or not. And we became great friends. And he became one of my mentors to help me with my business. We went and had coffee and talked. And in that conversation, that class that Small Business Development Center was doing, Fast Start or Growth Smart, something.
Yeah, we did that too.
They've changed the name. Recommend that too if you're a new business owner. But anyway, when that ended, all of those relationships that we built in that class for 6 weeks or so, I was just kind of telling Chris, I wish that wouldn't end. I want to keep that going. And we just started saying, what if we did? Like, what if we had a group that of those people, and we met once a month or whatever, and he was saying, "Hey, what do you think about that?" I said, I love that idea. He goes, "You think people would come?" I said, "Chris, if we put this together, I'll have a waiting list," which we did.
We did, yeah.
And so it started off associated with the Terry College. And so we met in the executive boardroom, which was nice, except for the parking was difficult, if you remember, especially on the cold days. Yeah. And, we really didn't have a format. It was, 15 or so business owners coming together, kind of like a mastermind group, but there was not really a format in it. And so he and I sort of kind of massaged how we were going to work that out. And one of the things that we knew that was critical is being able to talk about real issues.
Yeah.
And so it was a 4-hour meeting once a month. And so we broke it up into 2 halves. We said one half will be a topic discussion, anything a business owner might want to talk about, cash flow issues or employment issues, hiring people, firing people, processes, systems, all the things that business owners are wrestling through. And then the second half, which is where I think the magic happens, was the issues processing, where business owners could be real and talk about the challenges that they were facing. And it was remarkable, the fruit that came from that group. Not just the people, but just the growth in myself and others. And so we're still doing that today.
Now,
wow.
Now, how many groups do you have? I know you had basically had at least 3 or 4 different groups out of that.
Yeah. So Chris ended up leaving the University of Georgia and went to Kennesaw State. And so we kind of took that group outside of the University of Georgia. And my current business partner now, we had considered turning that into a business.
Okay.
And we said, hey, what would that look like if this was because, they have consulting and mastermind businesses. And at the time, it wasn't a business. And we charged a fee, but it was minimal. It was just to cover the food and all that kind of stuff. And so we started moving that direction to try to turn it into a business. And we had more than one group at that time. And I guess that would have been maybe around 2015. And, it's interesting when you turn something into a business, meaning something that you need to pay, have a budget and all that. If it's a hobby, it starts to become a job. Mm-hmm. Right. And I noticed that as we were trying to push that to grow it, it became really stale for me. It became less of a passion for me. And so we had other things going on. And so I just kind of went back to Mike and I said, I don't want to do this. Let's just shrink back to one group. Okay. And let it be what it always has been. It's just I have a passion for hearing other people and growing, listening to other business owners, but I also have a passion of helping other people grow. Like that fills me up when I see that I get to be a part of somebody else's success. And that's what makes that group special. And it we just actually had our meeting yesterday. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Where is it now? Where do you meet now?
So good friend of mine, Kay Keller with United Way,
Okay.
she has opened up her conference room, and that's where we meet.
Nice.
Okay. Well, just even the time that I was in the group, it was priceless. Because like just dealing with all the things you go through as a business owner, putting all these different hats on, but then when you go around your friends, it's like you really can't talk about it. It's like when you do talk about it, it's like, man, quit complaining.
Yeah.
You know what? And it's like they didn't understand, just all the things that you're going through. But then coming to this meeting once a month, and it was hard because it was like, half a day. And, but it was just like, just all the struggles, payroll and just employees. And once I got, it's like, man, just grinding, just trying to make it. And then once I leave this group, leave the meeting, it's like, man, let's start another business, and so it was just so energizing because you go in there and other people are speaking the same language, and so it was really priceless because it really kept me going, to where it's like inspired and challenging. And so it was, yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Memories. UGA has a magazine, or I'm not sure what it's called or how they do it, but they did an article about me and Chris way back, and you were actually in it, if you remember. I don't know how many years ago that was. And they had a big picture on the front of the article of me and Chris, having coffee, and the title was, I think it was like Business Owner Therapy,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah. And that's really what that has become. And I'll never forget one of the business owners in our group, many, many years ago. He said, to be a good entrepreneur, you got to be a liar. And we all kind of like, what are you talking about? And like everybody was like, and he said, you can't tell anybody what's really going on. And he said, think about it, guys. If you're stressing out about making payroll and you haven't been able to sleep all weekend because you're worried about making payroll, which every business owner knows what that feels like, you can't tell anybody. Right. And so you had a horrible weekend because you're worried about that client that's supposed to pay and they're 60 months or 60 days late, and you're not going to make payroll, and you walk in on Monday morning, hey, how's it going? It's going great. Yeah. You got to lie. And then you go home.
They'll all quit.
They'll all quit, right? You can't tell them. You can't let that out, right? Yeah. And then you go home and you're struggling because you don't know if you're going to get paid. And your wife's like, how you doing? And you're like, I'm doing great, because you don't want to freak your wife out. And I remember early on when I started my first business in 2005, and when I started realizing this reality, my wife and I, we are very transparent with each other, as I think you should be. And I had to learn there's certain things that I couldn't tell her. She would tell me not to tell her because she would get so stressed. When I was first starting my business, she's like, you can't talk to me about this. You are stressing me out. Yeah. I don't know how you handle this. And it was therapeutic for me to be able to vent to her about the challenges. But I had to learn I can't share some of this stuff because we're wired differently.
Yeah.
So I didn't have an outlet. And so that group really became that outlet where I could come in and just say, guys, I'm not sleeping at night. Yeah. Anybody else relate? Yeah. And everybody's like, we all are.
Well, I remember early on and going to the classes, we talked about the difference between going to business school, these 18, 20-year-olds who've never had to make payroll, and they're learning all the conceptual things, but yeah, payroll is everybody's nightmare. Like,
you want to freak
open up a credit line because of payroll.
Yeah. I always used to say, you want to freak a whole bunch of small business owners out? Walk in the room and say, hey, this month is double payroll month, yeah. If you did it. But
exactly.
If you had more weeks or whatever, you know.
The third payroll 1 month.
Yeah. We used to, oh no, it's this month. And we eventually turned it where we paid, once a month, so that didn't happen. But gosh, just cash flow issues.
Yeah.
Well, you made that comment about, things you couldn't tell your wife, but we were in business together.
Yeah.
And so it was it was really hard.
No, literally, I would say, go talk to Joe.
Yeah.
About me.
Yeah.
Well, and it got to a point where, like, even in our marriage, everything turned into business. And I remember just even having to go get some counseling because it was like everything revolved around the business. And, you know, our pastor was basically saying, hey, you got to find the time. Like, you know, when someone's like, she's burnt out or you burn out, it's like, hey, we're done. You know, and basically have like to where business wasn't our life or our marriage, you know. And so we had to, you know, I mean, it was really helpful because it's like, hey, you know, we got to create dates and different things like that just because the business that, you know, was really overwhelming.
Yeah, when the business was good, we had fun. We had money in our pocket, and man,
Well, you know, we have many spiritual conversations, and for me, it's very difficult to separate any topic without talking about that. I think that, for me, was a huge transformation in that one of the things when I was younger, you know, you throw around this word, you know, workaholic. And I used to think a workaholic was somebody who, you know, just worked a lot because they had to. Well, when I'm building businesses, I love it and I enjoy it. And if you're not careful, you find yourself doing that all the time. And I think what happened to me in, gosh, I guess my mid 30s is I started having sort of a life crisis of sorts in that my physical body couldn't keep up with my passion. And so physically, my body was rejecting how hard I was pushing myself, lack of sleep, and sometimes I'm stressed. Well, the stress too.
Yeah.
I would put myself in. I would handle the stress and just deal with it.
even though it's fun,
Yeah.
it's still stress.
Well, it's, you know, it's like playing football. It's stressful, but it's
Yeah.
fun. You know, the challenge of it, right? And so for me, I would have it no other way. I love the challenge. And the other thing about me that's interesting is I perform better under stress. And without even thinking about it, I would put myself in stressful situations. And when I was younger, my body just was resilient. And as I got into my 30s and 40s, my body was like, no, you're not doing this anymore. You got to stop and take care of me. Well, then, you know, challenges happened in life, more intense than other times in my life. And so emotionally, I was dealing with challenges and, you know, going to church every Sunday, reading the Bible, doing the Christian checklist kind of thing. I was not feeling what the Bible promised. I was feeling quite the opposite. You know, in Jeremiah it talks about, you know, the tree in the desert, this like a tree planted by the streams, right? And if the heat comes and the scorching heat, you know, you're flourishing. And I'm like, that's not me. And so what I realized in that time is that I had started to worship my businesses. Yeah. Well, at the time I had one, and money. And when you think about worship, the way I see it now is, how do you know if you have another God? Well, when it says jump, you say how high. And so at that time, business was such the priority in my life that if anything happened, you know, let's just hypothetically say I had some very important family, celebration or event that was important for some reason, an anniversary or birthday or whatever, a soccer game or whatever, and we had planned to be there. If we had carved out the time and we were supposed to be there and something unexpected happened at work, I assumed everybody should know I'm not going to be there because I got to go take care of this. This is the priority. And I didn't realize I'd gotten into that mode. And then, you know, I found my center, what I call my Christ-centeredness. Somehow I went out to the botanical gardens and there have some trails out there. And I really started kind of talking to God, not praying.
Yeah.
And I say that, it is prayer, right? I say that because I think people misunderstand what prayer is. And so for me, I started talking to God.
Prayer is 30 minutes.
Right.
You turn your clock on,
Yep.
and then you
Yep.
get on your knees. No.
Yeah. And for me, prayer was a list of requests.
Yeah.
You know, I got this client that's going to pay me a lot of money. Will you make that happen, God? You know, this cosmic Santa Claus, right? And so what happened to me is, you know, 15 years ago is it wasn't working. And so through some mentors and some spiritual friends of mine, I found myself out in the woods on a trail and sort of having my Lieutenant Dan moment. Like, God, I hear all these promises, but I'm not experiencing them.
Yeah.
And I let it out. And, I was a little risky with God and my frustration and anger. He can handle it, though, by the way. But at the same time, I still had faith that the problem wasn't him. And so in that time, he revealed to me, I asked him, where are you in my time of crisis? And he's like, it's not where I am. I've always been here.
Yeah.
It's where you are.
Yeah.
And I was in confusion. I was like, wait a minute. I'm at church every Sunday. I get up and read my Bible all the time. I know it inside and out. I do the tithe thing. I share my faith. I do all the things. What are you talking about? Where am I? He's like, you're not with me. I'm like, well, that didn't make sense. Because in my mind at that time, a relationship with God was these, you go to church every Sunday, you tithe, you share your faith, you put that in a bag, shake it up, and you have a relationship. Well, try that with your wife. Right?
Right.
Hey, I want to have a date night every Thursday night. I hear that a lot. Well, if I go on a date night with my wife and I'm on my phone the whole time, I did the date night.
Yeah.
But we didn't connect, right? And this was really one of the first times I connected and was real. And it was like God was saying, about time. How about you stop worshiping all this and trust me and follow me? And so I made that decision, and all of a sudden, it wasn't like instant.
Yeah.
But it was a process of me realizing, man, this business world has consumed me. And because I'm worshiping it and bowing down to it at its whims, the fruit in my life are the fruit. It's the fruit of those gods.
Yeah.
If you want the fruit of God, of the true God, you got to put him first. And so it was a process over the next, 15 years of learning how to be successful and work hard. That's not what I'm saying, but putting God first in that. Yeah. And it was crazy because now, and I know I've been through it, I understand it logically, but I also can't explain it. I work way less now and make way more money than I did when I worshiped my business. I was working all the time, and I was successful, and I made some money, but I'm multiplied it now. And part of it is the stuff that we've talked about with the the logic of how to manage money and build wealth and all that kind of stuff. But I think when you put God first, there's a clarity.
Yeah.
I was sharing this with somebody the other day. When you think about the Jesus feeding the 5,000, I've never noticed that is incorrect. He didn't feed anybody. Like, go back and read the story. The disciples were the ones that fed everybody. He never intended to do everything for us. He intended to do everything through us. Yeah. So they come to him and they say, hey, we have a problem. People are hungry. And he's like, well, go take care of the problem. And then they come back and say, we don't have enough resources. We are inadequate. You got to do this. And he's like, no. That's not how this works. He doesn't tell them, all right, sit down and watch me and crack his knuckles and go to work. No, he doesn't do that. Yeah. He says, bring me what you got. And then he multiplies their resources and then gives it back to him and says, now go feed them, right? And I think that's what he's done for me as a business leader. He's taken what I have, and as I put him first, he's multiplied it and made me even a better version of who I am. So I'm a better business owner. Not just making money, but people love working for me. Of course they love working for somebody who loves them, right? Yeah. Like, that's not a word you use often in business. Yeah. And so it just jumps out to people when they see a business that has love. Yeah. Like, how does that work, right? Yeah. What does that look like?
To me, I've been thinking recently about the difference between being driven and being called.
Ooh, I like
and so
that.
that drive, it's natural, it's in us, but we have to slow down. I mean, we live in such a fast-paced world that you just, okay, that next thing, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Ooh, that's a good opportunity, this. But I mean, when you spend time with God and then you let him call you, and then it's a slower process and it's so enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think about my children.
Well, let me
Go ahead.
We how long have you been married?
27 years.
27 years. How many kids?
Got 3 kids.
Okay. Now you can go in there.
And my youngest, is 17, so I'm almost an empty nester. So
Okay.
I've got the gray hair to prove it.
Hey.
So I think about my kids, if and I compare that to the way I've viewed God. I think God is more like a father than we even realize, or mother, if you want to say it that way. But like my kids as grown adults, they're in that stage. Well, young adults, right? They're in the moving into that stage where they're making some pretty big decisions in their life.
Yeah.
I've always said that, when you're in your late teens, early 20s, you make the biggest decisions of your life and you're ill-equipped for it. So who you're going to marry, what career path you're going to choose, all that stuff, whether or not to go to college, all that stuff. And so they, of course, come to us out of fear and anxiety. And this is an intense time, and they want guidance. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to choose for them.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to,
Yeah.
right? And I think oftentimes we go to God and we're like, what do you want me to do? Mm-hmm. And I think God's like, well, I gave you your life. Go live it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I want to be involved,
Yeah.
but I don't want to live it for you. And oftentimes we think God, when we think God's will, so to speak, we think God is going to tell us every single little thing. No, that would be him living your life.
The will of God is to glorify him. I just read that yesterday.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and
very general. It's like, that's kind of simple. I could just glorify in whatever I do.
Yeah.
Just glorify you. Yeah.
so it's like if one of my children, let's say they were in college and they had an intense test that they got to study for, and they just can't do it. So they come to me and say, Dad, will you take the test for me? And I go take the test and I ace it. And then they come to me and say, hey, look, Dad, I aced the test. I'm not going to be proud of that, right?
Right.
I'm going to be proud of them doing their thing, right? And, my middle son, he just got his real estate license.
Oh wow.
He's 20, about to be 21. And it was tough for him. That's a hard license to get. It's a hard test, and it took him a few times. And I was super proud of him for getting that license. But what I told my wife is, you know what? If he'd had gone in and passed that test the very first time, I would have been proud of him for getting it. But I'm more proud of him because he wrestled and
Yeah.
fought through it.
Yeah.
It really, I was just like, wow, that's hard to do, to
Yeah.
keep at it. It's easy to quit, right?
Yeah.
And I was proud of him for continuing on. And I think God sees that in us. When life gets tough, we look at God like, why are you making it tough? I didn't make it tough. It's just tough, right?
Yeah.
Keep going. Don't quit.
Yeah.
And when we get through, I see him beaming with that pride. You did that, son.
Yeah.
And he was involved, but
Yeah.
he didn't do it for us,
Yeah.
kind
Right.
of thing.
Right. Nice.
Yeah. Suffering is just a part of life. And so we are drawn to him in that suffering. So I don't run away from suffering anymore. It's going to come. But man, God reveals himself, his different aspects of his character in that suffering. So it's just, you can almost, I don't quite say you can embrace suffering, but I'm almost there.
Well, and being an entrepreneur, you're going to suffer.
Yeah.
Like you're choosing it.
Yeah.
And, that book, The E-Myth, well, the title E-Myth, The Entrepreneurial Myth, by the way, is a great book. Go read it if you haven't, if you're wanting to be an entrepreneur. Michael Gerber, I believe.
Yeah.
The entrepreneurial myth is you think it's like this, Captain America, this heroic, the wind blowing in there, that's a bit, when in reality, they're probably curled up underneath their desk in the fetal position, right? It's tough. It is the hardest thing I've ever done.
Well, speaking of that book, I think we got the edition revised or revisited.
Yep.
And man, it was like, it was life changing because what we did, we actually set a weekend aside to go through the book, and that's part of one of our classes, go through the book. We actually sent the kids off to the grandparents for the whole weekend, and we went through the whole book, basically setting up systems and different things like that. And it was so enlightening. It was like, wow, because now we're putting systems in place and different things like that. So yeah.
So you went from owning one business in 2005, and how many do you own now?
5. So my business partner, shout out to Mike Denham,
Mike Denham, hey.
wouldn't be where I am without
You guys
him.
have been together a long time.
Yeah. So we met, I met Mike probably around the same time.
Yeah.
I met you guys. And
And he owned a business as well.
yeah, funny story. I don't think there's no reason why he wouldn't mind me saying this. Funny story. I was doing the IT thing back in the day, and I was by myself with Velocity back then, doing everything, and that's a whole another topic, how hard that is. Anyway, so I got this phone call from somebody in BNI, and I don't remember who the guy was, but he was a like an internet services broker, and so he called me up. And I had met Mike, but I didn't know him. And he called me up and he said, hey, Mike Denham needs Wi-Fi for his apartment. And I was kind of, Mike lives in an apartment. He's got 2 kids. And, man, he must not be he must be really struggling, And so I felt some compassion that maybe Mike's down on his luck or something like that. And so I told this guy, I said, really? This job was too small for me at the time. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you know what? Here's what I'll do. I'll go out and do it for free. If Mike pays for the hardware, and it's a simple setup of Wi-Fi in his apartment, right? And the guy kind of responded weird. He was quiet, and he goes, okay, whatever. And I'm like, okay. And he said, well, you want to meet with us and talk about it? And I'm thinking, what is there to talk about? This is about the easiest, lamest job. Sure, I guess so. So we were meeting at the coffee shop, and I walk up, and they're sitting at this table with all these papers and stuff, and I'm like confused. And I walk up, and hey guys, what's up? I said, what are we doing? And Mike's like, did he not tell you what we're doing? I said, well, I'm supposed to install Wi-Fi in your apartment. And he laughed and goes, no, my apartment complex.
Oh.
And I'm like, wait a minute.
He just bought an apartment.
That ain't free. And I got excited like
Wow.
that's a project, right? And so I was like, your apartment, like you own an apartment? And he goes, yeah, I own a lot of, and I'm like, hold the phone. Cause he's not a flashy guy.
Very humble. Yeah.
Very, and I'm like, you got to talk, after this, I got to talk to you. Like, I want to understand where you are. Cause you're way ahead of me. And so he became a great friend. We, Georgia Bulldog fan. We go to the football games together, and just a mentor, helping me grow my business. And I had talked to him a few times. I'm like, hey man, if you ever want to buy into this company, I could use you. So he bought in 2000, I don't know, 11, 12, and instantly he brought. I always say I'm more like Mark Richt. He's more like Kirby Smart. If you don't know who those guys are, I'm the fluffy one. Mike is the one that cracks the whip kind of thing, holds people accountable. And there was instant growth.
Yeah.
Like I don't do well managing and holding people accountable, and so there was we were leaking money in areas where we should have been tighter. There was instant growth with him coming in, and we were the yin and yang kind of thing, and we learned as partners when this is he needs to step forward and lead, and I need to, and we really work well that way. And then he was the one that kind of came to me afterwards, or not afterwards, but during that period, and said, all right, we need to do some other stuff. And at the time, I hadn't thought about doing another business. Like, you can do that? You can have more than one? How would that look? What would that look like? Well, you got to build your business in a way that it can run without you. And so we started off in real estate. And as that grew, we started off, we bought some businesses. Some were wins and some weren't. And so now, we've been doing that for a while, and we're doing really well.
And is that primarily commercial real estate that you do?
So with Mike, it's all commercial.
Okay.
My wife and I have a couple of residential properties, but I prefer commercial.
You told us that one time, and your reason was very simple, but you can change the lock if they don't pay rent. It's like, that would be
Yeah.
really helpful.
Yeah. So, if you're not, if you've never been a landlord, oftentimes the landlord gets villainized,
Yeah.
right? And so when you buy a property, if you've worked hard and you've saved your money and you buy a property, you're buying it based on the income that it's going to produce for you.
Right.
Full stop.
Yeah.
And I mean, the appreciation value, right? So you go in there and you're taking a risk.
Yeah.
You're risking your future. And so you buy this property, and if something you don't factor in is somebody, gets to stay in your place without paying rent for a period of time, how do you factor that into your calculation?
Yeah.
And so if it's let's just make it more difficult. Let's say it's a single mom with some kids and you own the property and they're not paying rent. How do you evict somebody like that?
Yeah.
Right.
But you're paying their rent essentially.
Yeah.
And so if you go evict somebody like that, you now become an evil person. And so I didn't want to fight those battles.
Right.
Like I don't even want to get into that, right? But also I didn't want to not be in real estate. So I went to an attorney friend of mine and I'm like, hey, if you bought a commercial property and you had a business that was renting, what is the eviction process? And he laughed. He's like, what are you talking about? There is no, you just change the locks.
Yeah.
And so I would rather fight that battle
Yeah.
than the other one.
Yeah.
And so, is that one of your favorite? So I guess now we can talk about so you taught us a lot about running a business, but then we also took classes with you about just personally investing. So is that one of so I do want to ask about some of your advice about personal investing. Is that one of your favorite ways is real estate investing?
So my training makes me say this, and you guys laugh when I say this. I say it every time. Mm-hmm. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a tax CPA. I don't give advice on any of that stuff. So, I'm just a dude on the internet, right? So I'll tell you what I think, and you do with it what you will.
By the
right?
way, we still watch Jaspreet.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
I love him. So first of all, let me say this. I think when it comes to money and finance and business and all that kind of stuff, we get these books and we read them. We get YouTube channels and different programs, and I think we have a tendency as humans to want to find out what tell me the formula. What's the formula? There is no formula. Anybody who tells you there is, I think they're misspoken. Meaning, it's their formula. It works for them, and if you try to go take something that somebody else is doing and put it into practice for you exactly like they're doing, you're probably going to make a mistake in that because their situation is different than yours.
Right.
You've got to be able to listen to all these brilliant people and take what they're saying and put it into practice for yourself. And it's not necessarily going to look exactly like and be okay with that.
Right.
I think maybe our educational system kind of builds that into us where they'll teach you a topic and then you have a test and there's a right and a wrong. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of get in that mindset after all these years of there is this right way and you're taking a test. So if you say Dave Ramsey, for example, you listen to Dave Ramsey and you take him as gospel truth, he says some great stuff, yeah. But some of the stuff that he says doesn't fit me.
Right.
And either I don't agree with it or it just is not applicable to what I'm trying to do. And it in fact would hurt me if I put that into practice, even though what he's saying is good, yeah, and in the right circumstance. And the other end of the spectrum is Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Those two, people argue all the time. Which one's right? They're both right.
Right.
Take what works for both of them and put it into practice. Yeah. So this is what I've done. And anybody who listens to what I've done, there's probably a lot of people that can come to me and say, oh, that's the dumbest way. Okay, it works for me.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, too, about building wealth. You could always do it better and have more money. That's not the problem. The problem is asking yourself, when's enough enough? So I could probably do better and make a better return. But when's enough enough? I've got enough.
Yeah.
Like I want to spend my energy focused on other things in my life, not dissecting whether or not I can get a squeeze a little bit more percentage out of my return, right? So part of
Or
what
pay a tiny bit less taxes.
that's right, right. So do the best you can, but
Right.
don't lose sleep over it, and don't let it consume you, like I was saying earlier. So here's in my view, I love Rich Dad Poor Dad. I respect Robert Kiyosaki, although there are some podcasts I've listened to where I'm like, I'm not sure I'm going to do that. But Rich Dad Poor Dad, love that book. I've read it like 8 times, and I, in a lot of ways, live the Rich Dad Poor Dad life. I also love Dave Ramsey. I wish he'd be a little bit more open-minded, but I put some of his principles in place too. I don't do just one or the other. I do all of it, right? I do what fits for me. And I want to encourage anybody who's going down that path to listen to all the people and come up with the formula that works for them.
Excuse me, right there. I remember the first time we came. So, in addition to the Terry business classes, we also did some personal finance classes with you. And the first one I came to, and Tony had already been going some, but you were talking about kind of the basics of budgeting and, living within your means to eventually get out of what we call the rat race. But I was like, okay, yes, those simple things, sometimes you just get off track and you just like, oh, well, you start trying to impress other people, or you're buying things outside of your means, or getting into debt over a car or whatever, and or multiple cars. So it's nice to just get back to that Dave Ramsey simple stuff. Sometimes with this, that simple stuff is where you do have to start a lot of times.
Well, so first thing that I think is important, that I believe is true, owning a business and building wealth are 2 different conversations. Owning a business and building wealth are 2 different conversations. You can build wealth without being a business owner. Mm-hmm. I never thought that was true until now. I understand that now. So if somebody comes to me, and they often do, and they're thinking about starting a business or buying a business, and the reason why they're wanting to do that is to build wealth, I try to dissect, like, is owning a business what you want, right, or is it building wealth? Mm. And so what I mean is, in my experience, the successful business owners, it's not what makes them successful as a business owner is not necessarily their intellect or their skill set or their talent in certain areas. I've seen all kinds of different people that are, some people are aggressive and, they're out there in front of people and they're very charismatic. I've seen other people that are very quiet and laid back, and both are successful in business. I've tried to figure out what makes a successful business owner. I think part of it, at least, is a personality. Like you've got to be able to be comfortable in the briar patch. Mm-hmm. Like you've got to, if you're going to start a business, you've got to be able to be comfortable in chaos, because that is going to be chaotic for a while. It's like having a baby. You're going to have diapers to change and all that stuff for a while until it matures. Now, if you buy a business, it's a little bit different. But either way, you're going to be carrying a lot, and you've got to be able to handle that in your personality. And it's not a negative thing if that's not what you're cut out for. Don't torture yourself. Yeah. But some people are wired to do that. So if you're not wired to own a business, it doesn't mean you can't build wealth. Yeah. And so those are 2 different conversations. I am more passionate these days about having the wealth building conversation than I am the business owner. I can have that conversation. I used to be more passionate about that, but there are so many things to learn as a business owner. Managing people, understanding marketing and accounting and taxes and all. I mean, there's so much that goes into owning a business. And if you're excited about that and growing in that, do it. And you can build wealth there. But if that all is just like, yeah, I'm not interested in all that, then go build wealth the Robert Kiyosaki way and the Dave Ramsey way. And so, which path would you guys like to take? You build wealth building or business ownership? Like where?
Today, let's do the wealth building.
Okay.
Well, and before we go there, because we're moving pretty fast.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of people don't know you like we know you.
Yeah.
And so like you were part of the Bulldog 100.
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit about that and just kind of give us a little insight into that?
Yeah. So the Bulldog 100 is the 100 fastest growing companies owned by UGA alumni. So I think the first year we were in it was maybe the second year they had done this ceremony. And it's really well done. It's a fun event. And, you submit your financials and they look over a 3-year period of, you can go on the website and they can tell you how they calculate the growth. So we thought we might be able to make it. So we put we submitted our financials. And so 2012, I think, was the first year we were in it. And it's really cool. It's like a black tie, big, production, and they have guest speaker, all that stuff. But then the ceremony starts, and they start counting backwards from 100. And so, they've got it set up where you can just walk up and they don't stop for each person, so it keeps it going. But it's really fun because you start off 100 and you announce who 100 is, and then 99, then 98. So you don't know. You just know you're in it. You don't know which number you are. And so there's all kinds of excitement and anticipation and whatnot. And so I was just like, I just don't want to be 100. I'd be good with 99, know? So they announced 100. I'm like, yes, 99. Okay, I'm better than 99. So anything beyond this. So they get down to 75, and I'm like, okay, cool. Wow. We're at top 75. And then they hit top 50. That's something, top 50. And we're all in a table, and all these business owners are in the crowd. And so each one of us are going up. And so we're at this table, and then, somebody at our table would go up. And, eventually we're the last one at our table, and everybody's like looking at it. We haven't gone yet. And so, top 30, like, wow, top 30, top 25. Now we're talking. Okay. Yeah. I was like, oh, can we make top 15? They announced 15. I'm like, wow, we made top 15. And then I'm like, oh, please don't be 11. Let me just at least make the top 10.
You go from 100
yeah. Like, I want to make the top 10,
Yeah.
And so we were number 7.
Oh, wow.
And I tell you what, that was fun. That was exciting. It was exhilarating to walk up there. I was dumbfounded. Like, I was not expecting that. And it was such a, just vote of confidence. Like, wow, we're doing something right. But I will say this too. I shared this couple last month at our entrepreneurship group. Mm-hmm. I hadn't thought about this a lot, but it came to my mind recently for some reason. So this was in Atlanta, and we got a hotel there, and we stayed the weekend, and we celebrated, and it was fun. It was nice. But I remember driving back from Atlanta after the ceremony, and I was just real quiet. And I was very sad. And I hadn't thought about this. I'd forgotten this part of it. So after all of this awesome experience, I'm driving back, and I'm just really like lost in my thoughts, and I'm real quiet, and I'm very sad. And my wife eventually like, are you all right? You're kind of quiet, which I'm normally not. And I said, no, I'm not. And she's like, what's going on? And I said, this is what it's about. Like, I'm not happy. Like, I'm miserable. But yet I'm being celebrated as one of the best. And there's this feeling of depression, like, this is what I've been working for. Wow. This kind of life. And it was along that same time period of when I had this sort of spiritual awakening of sorts, where I realized this is the world that you're like, the world promises you that this is going to be awesome, but it leaves you feeling empty. And when you achieve something high, there's this side effect of just this depression that hits you that, God, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And I have been around a lot of very wealthy, successful business owners that are suicidal because they get to that pinnacle and they find out that everything they worked for their entire lives was a lie. and they can't deal with that. And I have a few of them in my friendship circle now that I've helped work through that. So that is a real part of it too, you know?
Yeah.
It almost sounds like winning the national championship.
Yeah.
I've heard people say that, like, is this all there is?
Is this all there is?
Wow.
Yeah. You're promised, my friend calls it your tiki god. Your tiki god promises all this, and then when you achieve it, it laughs at you and points at you and says, I got you. And so I think that's part of, for me, what following Jesus is all about, is giving you meaning and not being deceived by all that other stuff. You still can be participating in that and achieving that. It's just not what you worship, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, just speaking of that process, well, it's been a joy, to watch at a distance to see that process, and it's just like where, like it's just like you're making more time for Jesus. And, we've teamed up, a lot. And, but it's just like, hey, I'll teach you how to make money, but then I get to tell you about Jesus.
Yeah, yeah.
And so
That's the really cool thing. Yeah.
and so just watching you over the years, it's just like this process,
And it just comes so naturally because it's in you, and then it just flows out. I remember one time we met for breakfast, and we had a question about some investment, and then all of a sudden we're in the Old Testament. I'm like, and it was better than talking about the investment question. I'm like, man, let's just keep talking about this. I don't even care about that anymore.
So I got to tell you this story. So let me say it a different way than you said it. Instead of I'm going to tell you about business, and I'm going to tell you about Jesus. I'm going to tell you about business. I'm going to introduce you to Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different. So I'm going to keep this confidential because this person told me to keep it confidential. So I'll keep it confidential. So I was there's a gentleman, very successful businessman. I've known him for many years, and we do business together. And I've known him, and I've always thought he was a religious guy because his kids participate in religion, and we've had somewhat, spiritual conversations, but not anything deep, but mostly business relationship. So he reached out to me and said, hey, let's get together. We got to talk. And I never know what we're going to talk about with this guy. And it could be personal, it could be business, but I'm thinking business. Excuse me. So we get together for coffee, and it was business, and he was this and that and the other. So his kids are my kids' age. So he starts kind of talking about his life and challenges with his kids. And I don't know what I said. Maybe I quoted a scripture or something. But when I did, it sort of, his face changed. Like there's something that hit, and there's something going on in here. And I'm noticing this change in demeanor, and he just kind of is thinking, and it's almost seeming like he's trying to figure out if he wants to say something or not. And then finally he decided, I'm going to say it. And so he says this to me. He says, Joe, I'm going to tell you something I've never told anybody. My wife knows, my kids know. I don't tell anybody. So I'm trusting you with this. He said, if this gets out, this will hurt me. And I'm like, whoa, what in the world is he about to tell me? He said, I'm an atheist. And I was like, I was a little surprised. And he goes, and I'm happy being an atheist. And then he just goes off on why he does not want to be a part of church and the church environment and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just sitting there listening. And he said, and I can't talk about this because I've lost friends over this. When people find out this is my stance, and I can lose business over this. When people find out this is my stance, they get upset with me and they argue with me. And he goes, he leans forward. He goes, I don't want to be your salvation project, And he starts kind of going down this, just venting. And so I just quietly let him vent. And then when he finished, he says, I hope this doesn't hurt our relationship. I hope that, he said, look, I respect you, and you do you, and I respect your beliefs, but I don't believe what you believe, and I hope that doesn't bother you. So I thought about it for a minute, and I said, do you know my wife? So my wife, Julie's a successful real estate agent in town. A lot of people know her.
Well, what did she do?
Successful real estate agent.
And with who?
Oh,
Advertisement real quick.
Corcoran.
Stop for
Corcoran
advertisement.
Classic Living.
Okay.
Julie Moon.
Yes,
just call Julie.
She's good.
So I said, do you know my wife? And he goes, I know of her, but I don't know her. And I said, if for some crazy reason you thought she didn't exist because you haven't met her, it doesn't bother me. I just had coffee with her this morning. I have a great relationship with my wife. She's amazing. She makes my life better. And the fact that you don't believe in her doesn't change that for me. Doesn't hurt my feelings. I think it's kind of weird, but it doesn't hurt my feelings. And in fact, I would like for you to meet her because it would probably make your life better in some way. And he kind of slow nodding goes, all right, that's interesting. And I said, and he's a big Georgia Bulldog fan. And I said, and furthermore, if I went up to Kirby Smart and I said, hey, Kirby, there's this kid in Germany, 16 years old, 6'8", 350 pounds, and runs a 4.14. Kirby's going, I don't believe it. No way. No way that somebody that big can run that fast. And I'm like, yeah, but look at these, ESPN articles. Yeah, I'm reading the articles. Doesn't matter. I don't believe it. Well, look at his picture, man. He's full of muscles and all that. Don't believe it. There's no way somebody that big can run that fast. Look at the video of him out running and tackling quarterbacks. I don't believe it. The only way Kirby's going to believe is if we jump on a plane and he's got his stopwatch and we fly over there and he runs a 40 and he clocks it at 4.1. Even then, Kirby's going to go, do it again. I don't believe it. Do it again. Yeah. And the second time, maybe even then, he's like, do it one more time. Yeah. And after the third time, Kirby's on the phone with his coaches. We got to get this kid. Yeah. He's a believer. Just like that.
Yeah.
No stories, no videos, That's none of that.
Yeah.
And so I told this guy, I said, look, you're not my salvation project. Number one, because I can't save you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't have to do anything except introduce you.
Yes.
Would you like to meet him? Would you like to find out? Start talking to him. And his whole demeanor changed. And at the end of that conversation, he's like, I've not been able to have a conversation like this. Wow. I realize how I need this. And so he's like, can we keep this going? I said, what do you want to do? He said, can we get together once a week? I said, let's do it.
Yeah.
And as we've gotten together, one of the things I told him, I said, I have a hunch that God has been speaking to you and you've been listening. This guy who claims to be an atheist, he's like, why do you say that? And I said, because I've known you for so long and I know your generosity. And I think that comes from God.
Yes.
And he goes, well, it's my worldview. Where did that come from? Mm-hmm. Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Did that come from your dad? Did that come? It was like, no, this is the way I see things. And I said, I think God is speaking that into you and you are listening to it and you're acting on it. You just don't know that. And then I started talking about a still, quiet voice. I said, I think God does that for everybody. It's just a matter of who's listening. When I used to think about Moses having this conversation, relationship with God, I was like, what's so special about him that he gets to talk to God? Now I think it's not what's so special about Moses that God talks to him. It's what's so special about Moses that he listened.
Yes.
And so I said, I think I have a hunch that you are hearing something. And I talked about this still small voice. He goes, I know what you're talking about. This atheist, I know what you're talking about. But I call that intuition. I said, call it what you want. I don't care. It's real.
Yeah.
And in these conversations, he's like, I'm really intrigued by what you're saying. I've never met a Christian that talks the way that you're talking. And not to, pump myself up, but I think if more Christians talked about that authentic relationship,
Yes.
Yeah.
and approach people like him that way, we would make much bigger impact than come to my church and hear all these stories.
Yeah.
Those are important, by the way.
And people want to be listened to.
Yeah.
He just
And
wanted
respected.
someone to listen to him and not cut him off and say, well, no, you can't say that around me. I find that all the time with my patients, just, they don't really care what I know. They just want someone to listen to them.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. So I know that's way off.
No,
We love it. That's why we love it.
I was gonna say, can we get another story?
Oh man, I've got tons of them.
Well, give us another one.
Well, I don't know.
Well, it's confidential. I don't know that person.
Yeah. So with him or somebody else?
Someone else.
So I'll share this. I really do believe that when it comes to church and faith, particularly in the United States, I think God is doing something that's big and different, and we're having a hard time swallowing this pill because it's different than what we've done in the past. And I've got a hunch that COVID was, I imagine like a board game with a lot of pieces on the board, and God just slamming his fist down and the pieces going flying.
Yes.
That's what it feels like in modern day church right now. And I think we have our traditions and we have our ways that we think things should be done. And it's hard when God said, I want to take a different turn here. It's hard for us to stay in step with him. But what I've noticed for the religious people who might be listening, what I've noticed in myself and my wife, as much as anybody else, we've gotten into this way of thinking that if you are trying to find a church community, a faith community, the way that a typical person goes about it is, and I'm speaking from experience, by the way, so I'm not criticizing any one person or group of people. Let's say you go to a new church because you're just dissatisfied with wherever you are. As soon as you pull in the parking lot, it starts, and you don't realize it. In your mind, you have a checklist, and you're pulling in and you're looking at how the parking is. You're looking at the building, and you don't even realize you're asking yourself, do I like this or not? And there's something in your mind that says yes or no. I do like this. I don't like this. This is too chaotic. This is too big. This is just right. This is too small. Whatever. You're doing that. And then you walk in the front door and you're looking at the building. Do I like the building or not? Is it pretty enough? Is it big enough? Or is it too big? Or whatever. You're doing your thing. You walk in the lobby and then you meet the first people. Are they friendly enough? Then you go in and you sit down for the performance. Is the music good enough for me? Is it my kind of music? Is the sermon good enough for me? Is it my kind of sermon? Is the children's ministry good enough for me? Is it too hot or is it too cold? We're doing all this the whole time. And we come back out and we get in the car with our spouse and we're like, all right, what'd you think? What we're really asking is, go down your checklist and tell me what you liked and what you didn't like. And if there are enough likes on that list, you're going to come back. And if there's not enough likes on that list, you're not going to come back. And what we don't realize is how incredibly selfish that is.
Yeah.
Self-centered.
Right.
Instead of asking, where does God want me to be? How does God want to do church? How does God want me to show up to church? How does God want my children to show up to church? If the air conditioning was broke, would I show up?
Oh,
Right? If the doors were locked, would I climb through the window? Or would I just walk around, turn around and go, oh, I guess it's locked, right? So I contrast that image of, and oh, by the way, this, I might get myself in trouble for saying all this. When you, as a church leader, placate to that, and you're trying to figure out what's going to make the people come. So I'm going to have the best children's ministry and the best sermons and the best music and the fog machine and whatever. And I'm not criticizing how people do church.
Right.
You do you. But what you attract is a person that if that stuff is missing, they're not coming back. Versus what I'm going to call the Rocky Balboa way of doing it, where you're in this nasty hole-in-the-wall gym.
in Liberia. That's why we
In
love
Liberia,
Liberia
right?
so
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
That's why we
yeah,
loved it so
yeah.
much. They
So-
wanted to be there.
So let me tell you this experience. So I'm not an alcoholic. I've really never been around many alcoholics until recently. And a friend of mine had relapsed and went back to AA, and I just was blown away by the transformation in his life. And I asked him, like, what is going on? I've known you, like, you have transformed. And we're sitting in this coffee shop, and he goes, Joe, I finally realize that without my relationship with God, I will wreck my life. And I thought, when he said that, I was like, that's pretty cool. That's good. And I just kind of nodded, maybe like I am right now. And he goes, no, you don't understand. And he leans over and he looks at me in the eye, and his tears started coming. He goes, you don't understand. Without my relationship with God for a minute, I will wreck my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it moved me the way he said that. And I left that thinking, do I think that way? Do all the people that I go to church with think that way?
Yeah.
Are we that serious about being close to God and how His presence protects us from all these evil forces that are coming against us. And I just really moved me. Well, then I met another person that had gone through AA, and it was the same thing. And I'm like, I got to go check this out.
Yeah.
So I asked if I could go. Like, am I allowed to go? And they have open meetings. And so one of my buddies invites me to go. And I walk in, and I'm going, praying like, God, I feel like you're about to teach me something.
Yeah.
And so I walk in, and here's what I had my radar up. I'm like, what are you here to teach me? I want to learn anything and everything you're here to teach me. So I'm paying attention to every detail because I think there's something powerful that's going to happen. So the first thing I do is I pull up, and it's a nasty building. And it's the kind of building that if you pulled up in the parking lot to go to church, you would turn around. And that was the first lesson. They're not putting all their resources in their building and their stained glass windows. They don't care about all that. Okay. I'm not making judgment. I'm just thinking, okay, interesting. Is there going to be 2 people in here? Standing room only. This room is full. Like there, you can't find a place to sit. I'm like, lesson number 2. These people are here for a different reason. They're not here for the air conditioning. They're not here for the nice building. So I'm like, okay, interesting. So lesson number 3, if you've ever been to an AA meeting, you know, I don't know how many people in the room, 80, 90 people in the room. Each person stands up and says, hey, my name's Bill and I'm an alcoholic. Hey, my name's Sherry and I'm an alcoholic. So they're doing that. And I'm like, this is interesting. And then I started realizing, wait, what am I going to say? So I think I said, I'm Joe and I'm a friend of the group, something like that. So, they're going around and everybody's saying this. And then the guy who starts to lead the group, he stands up and says, hey, my name's Fred. I'm an alcoholic. The leader. And I thought somebody somewhere along the way thought that was important for everybody to tell everybody who they are. And I thought, I've been in a lot of church groups, particularly the leader, where the leader stands up and says, hey, my name's Bill and I have a PhD in biblical studies. You need to listen to me because I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Instead of, hey, my name's Bill and I'm a sinner. I may have some things to say and you might gather some things out of what I have to say, but don't you forget for 1 second who I am, because I can mislead you. We all can mislead each other. And there's a humility about that really grabbed me. And then the 4th thing that I learned in that room is there's people that look like they came straight out of a bank, suit and tie. And there are people that look like they came straight off the streets. And they're in the same room together, and there's a fellowship there. And I just was moved. And I walked out of that room and I thought, there's a lot of things that churches could learn from this group. Here's a couple other things that I realized later, not in that meeting, as I started digging in. The first rule, I don't know what they call it, rule, tenet of AA is you're not going to get sober unless you have a relationship with God. Now, I know I've heard it, well, they don't let you say Jesus or all that. I don't care. They come in and they say, if you don't believe in God, just leave. Yeah. We can't help you. Yeah. You've got to understand this first. Only God can save you from this. Yes. Everybody in that room gets that, in my opinion, better than a lot of Christians who go to church every Sunday. Yeah. They understand that their life depends on it. And a lot of Christians, they're just kind of going through the motions. And I'm not, again, I'm saying this to help people, not to hurt people, right? So there's that. Then the other thing is, and this blows my mind. I never thought about it this way. They say we want to grow through attraction, not promotion. We want to grow through attraction, not promotion. In other words, don't talk about AA. Don't talk about it. So they don't talk about it, and yet they grow. Like, just let that sit. What? Instead, like, I'm a salesperson by nature. I can convince people to do things. Yeah. I can get people to come to church. But if they go because I convince them to go, it's not going to stick. Yeah. But if they go because they have to climb, like if they have the attitude, I got to be here. Right. I'm going to climb through the windows. I'm going to get in one way or another. I'm getting in. If you have that mentality, which is the way these people have that mentality, then it's just going to grow, because who's going to be attracted to it?
Yeah.
The people who think they need it.
Yes.
Right. And so how are they attracted? The same way I was attracted.
Yeah.
I saw somebody whose life was changed,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I was like, I got to check this out.
Yeah.
What is going on in your life? And then I end up at an AA group, and I'm not an alcoholic, right?
Yeah.
How different would church look if you never talked about it, but yet somebody saw something in your life and said, I got to know what's going on with you.
Yeah.
To me, that's evangelism.
Yeah.
Keep your mouth shut and let your life attract the people. Right. What would churches look like if that's what we did? Well, to be able to do that, you got to have the life.
Yeah.
You can't just have the words.
Yeah.
Yep.
We dress up nice. And so anyway, I could go down that path. There's a lot of paths here. I mean, I like to talk, but these are things to me. And when it comes into business, how you run your business.
Like if you have the fruit of the Spirit in your business,
Yes.
that's very attractive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I've had
Because it flows out of who you are as a person, and then you just infuse that into your business.
So another story here. This was way back when. I had a guy that was one of my best employees. There was a situation. It's too long to tell the whole story. Just bear with me here. There was a situation where I was going to find out that he was HIV positive. And I was going to find out, and it was wrong that I should find this out. It was a mistake. But he knew that I was going to find this out, and he knew that I was going to find out that he was gay. And he didn't want me to find out. He wanted me to hear it from him. So he comes up to me during office hours, and he says, hey, I need to talk. You and I need to talk. And I'm like, all right, let's talk. And he said, no, after hours. And I said, okay. So we get together after hours, and he'd been working with me for a while, so I knew him well. So he's wanting to tell me something that he can't tell me. And so he's hawing around, and he's awkward, and he's like, I'm like, it seems like you need to tell me something. You're having a hard time. Just tell me what's going on. And he's like, well, in Athens, there's a lot of different people. I'm like, yes, I do know that. And he said, they live an alternative lifestyle. I'm like, okay, interesting. I'm not sure why we're talking about those. Yes. And he's like, well, I'm one of those. And I said, I'm sorry. I'm confused. Like, what are you trying to tell me? And he's like, well, I'm gay. And I said, okay. And he said, I wanted you to hear it from me. And I said, okay. And he said, I hope you're okay with that. And I'm like, I am still confused. Like, what are we talking about here? Why are we talking about this? And he's like, well, because of this, that, you're going to find this out. And I know you're a Christian, and I know you hate gays. Mm. And I didn't want you to fire me. And I was dumbfounded. And I said, I don't know if I should have my feelings hurt, or if I should be angry that you think this about me. Yeah. Like, you know me. You know that's not who I am.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, but you're Christian, and you Christians and this and that and the other. And I said, but you know me. You know that. I said, is it going to change your performance at work that I know this now? And he goes, no. And then I'm like, why would I fire you over this? Like, I don't understand. He goes, well, Christians and this. I said, would you stop with that? And I said, I said, no, I'm not going to fire you. I like you. This doesn't change anything. And he says to me, man, you're different than any Christian I've ever met.
Yeah.
And I said, well, it makes me wonder if you've ever met a Christian, first of all. And I said, second of all, I said, if Jesus walked in this room right now and you met him, you would fall in love with him. Like, you would be amazed by him. You would not feel the way you think you are going to feel. You would be blown away. You would want to be Jesus's friend. Like, that's who he is. Yeah. I don't know where all this other stuff is coming from. And he got emotional. He got emotional with me. And he just kind of shook his head. And he goes, Joe, I don't know how you do it. He said, if you ask me to go in the parking lot and scoop up dog poo on the parking lot, I would do it for you. I like working for you. And I said, see, That right there, the reason why you feel that way about me, you don't feel that way about me. You feel that way about Jesus.
Amen.
What you see in me is Jesus.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why you feel the way you feel. And I said, if you really understood who Jesus is, not who he was,
Yeah.
who he is, you would have a whole different view of things. There are a lot of people with good intentions who've jacked things up. And we're all human and all that kind of stuff, but they have tainted what you think you know Jesus is. And I hope that our relationship, you can see something different. And he goes, whatever I see, I like it. And I said, well, you're fine. We're fine. We didn't even need to have this conversation, right? But we need more business owners that are doing that, you know?
And like for me, you know, like owning my own business, septic and all that, I'm going into people's houses every day, you know, and it's just like having these conversations. And a lot of them knew that I was Christian, you know, like word of mouth, you know, and it's just like, and they're like asking certain questions and it's just like you build these relationships and it's just like, well, but you're a Christian, you know, well, and I remember this one lady, we had a conversation and I'm sorry to go down that road, but
Go for it.
It was like, you know, similar, but she's going to this about her son and she was expecting me to get a certain attitude and say certain things and I didn't. And she's like, and the conversation went further and further. And I mean, and she eventually broke out into tears. And it was just like, she was just amazed that I didn't have like a certain reaction. And I'm like, I'm a Christian, you know, and she was like, when she didn't get the response she thought she was going to get. And I mean, you know, I wound up praying with her, different things like that. But so many conversations like that, or, you know, homes that I've gone into, and it's just, God is so awesome, you know, just how he does things like that. And a lot of people say, well, how can you go to this house or that house and do this? It's just like, well, first of all, I'm a Christian, but then I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a business owner.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't like isolate which houses you choose to go into, which houses you don't. And so you learn to build relationships and different things like that. And
What opportunity just to be kind and to love others in every situation. And then they just see the love of God in you. And it's like, oh, I can be kind to anyone. I can choose that.
Absolutely. And so segue into the wealth discussion.